Hi, Coach Val here today with a tip for you when you're creating your compositions. If you're a novice and you're really just trying to use the tools that you have at your fingertips to create compositions, posters, whatever you need to do, you might be stuck with how to kind of arrange the elements on the page. So I want you to consider my metaphor that I like to call the elevator principle. Okay? So you want to imagine walking into an elevator and you're by yourself. So are you in the middle? Are you on the side? You press a button, the floor, the elevator goes up, the door opens, another person gets in. Okay, so you rearrange, you maybe get closer to the edge to allow for the space for that other person. The door closes, goes to another floor, the door opens, and then a group comes in, whether it be a pair or a mother-daughter or someone with a suitcase. Okay, so imagine yourselves rearranging in that space again. Okay, so as humans, we really want to have this kind of safe space around us, and in different cultures that space is going to be obviously different. But in America, we really like, to have a lot of space around us. So if you look at the composition of the photographs that are behind me that I've stumbled upon for this lesson, you can see that all of those people are safe in the elevator, right? They've kind of pushed themselves to the side and they don't want to touch. They don't want to be connected to each other. But in a design composition, you want things to relate to each other. So some of the things that unify the items on your page is similarity, unity, right? So things that are the same shape, things are the same color, the same typography. Those things are going to help kind of coalesce the information. But what's happening is our brain doesn't know where to look first, right? So there's like, look at all that stuff. There's, I don't know what to do. And there's something tiny in the middle. So we're looking for a focal point and then we don't really know where to go from there. All right, so what you want to do is you want things to kind of cluster together. So you want to be the friends in the elevator. You want to be that unit in the elevator. This is called Gestalt theory. It's the idea of the whole before the parts. So if things are spread apart disparately, the brain is like working and doing all this energy to try and figure out what that is, right? So if there's like spots or things like that, we can't connect it. But if you look at clouds or you find, shapes and things, that's your brain saying, going through its computer storage and saying, oh, I know what that is, right? So you could have the outline of something with just dots, and you can identify it as a shape. You don't need the whole solid shape. So that's the Gestalt theory. So what you want to do is you want to look at the compositions that you're creating. Is everything the same size? So hold a coin or your hand, and then also you can, measure the distance between things. So this is a pretty common compositional style that entry-level people in design tend to do, and things are very safe spaces away from each other. Talking about the elevator principle, but what you really want to be thinking about are these items that are similar in shape, should be uniform, more unified, right? Because the shape is holding them together, and then these two are different shapes. So right now, it's just kind of a cluster. We don't really know where to look, and we've got these two chairs that are in the center, either side. So if you think about this as a giant elevator, you can see all the different people and the portraits that are in there. But in order to create a composition that is interesting, what's happening is we don't know where to start. Our brain is not quite sure what's going on. All of these things are separated and they're individual. And then the tiniest thing is in the middle, which makes it a central focal point. But in order to make that more dynamic, number one, you might want to move the larger item to the middle so that it is the dynamic focal point. And then the small one could have the same proximity of the smaller one here together, and then that starts to cluster, right? So if these things were just kind of moved slightly closer to each other, then we would start to have a really interesting composition. Now transfer that information to something like your poster or a brochure or something that you're doing, and you can see that we're pushing things to the side and we're using the edges of the frame, and we're kind of framing things when we're making our composition. So I want you to think about the elevator principle and how you can use these ideas to create a more pleasing composition. So right now, these are all the same size, right? These three things are all the same size, so if they were clustered together, it would be a more interesting unit. And then these two have the interesting kind of size relationships. So this one is the hierarchy, the more important one, whereas this one's in the center. It just doesn't make sense for that to be in the middle. It's the smallest thing. Okay. What would work is if these things were closer and more equidistant, right? So you want to reduce your amount of space in between your objects if you want them to read as a unit. Kind of unify and use that idea of the elevator principle of like spacing, the way that we space, and then the proximity together in addition to the scale. Everything's the same size, so if you're looking at your composition, you're trying to figure it out, put your hand or a coin or something like that over the sizes of the objects. And if they're all the same size and then they're equidistant apart, it's really hard for our brain to figure out where to look first. Right? So number one, you need a hierarchy, but number two, Gestalt theory. And it's really about the brain puts together the whole before the parts. So the things that are clustered together are going to be seen as a unit, and then the other things are going to be kind of disparate, right? So you want to really kind of keep that in the back of your mind, and in your compositions, you want to be the family in that elevator. You want to be the person with the suitcase. You want to make sure that those things are kind of clustered together and that there's a scale relationship. So I call this the elevator principle, using the theories of Gestalt. So you always need to remember the whole before the parts.